So welcome Year 6. This is a presentation to show you some pieces of work that have been produced using textiles and inspired by the sea. So that is obviously your theme for your transition project. You don't have to use any of these examples, but you might want to take little bits and pieces from them and then produce something that is totally original for you as an artist. Okay, so if we go on to the second slide, if we have a look here and we start looking at these 5 examples of textile work by different artists, you can see that one thing that they have in common is that they use line in a really specific way to show movement and power that evokes the sea. So if we look at this one on the top left hand corner, for example, obviously this is based just on one massive wave crashing, very similar that you would see at high tide in St. Wands. And what the artist has done is they've used embroidery techniques. I think this has probably been done on a sewing machine, which you can have a go if you've got one of those, and they've layered stitch upon stitch upon stitch to get that really powerful effect of lots and lots of lines, giving lots of energy, lots of force to get that beautiful wave crashing over. And if you look, they've put it on a painted background, and they've made sure that they've got some darker shades and some lighter shades to really capture where the light would hit the wave at the top. If we have a look at this one on the bottom left, this one is a bit more stylistic. The waves are actually, it looks like it's part of a choppy sort of sea, and the waves are very similar. They're stylized in such a way that they're quite repetitive. However, again, you've still got this idea of movement being captured as the lines curve over and the choppy waves sort of break over one another. This one in the middle gives you a different example. It reminds me, well, I interpret it as water that's sort of swirling around this focal point in the middle here, which has used a bit of newspaper, a bit of collage as a focal point. And I think it could be part of water that's swirling around a rock, which is shown by the newspaper. And again, it captures that feeling of swirl, of movement, different to the big wave, different to the choppy seas. But again, you can see all these different lines that are evoking that feel of power. These two are quite interesting. If we have a look, as well as using line to show the movement of the waves, you've got some interesting embellishments. So you've got little shells in here. In this one, you've got little beads. So all the flotsam and jetsam that's being pushed up and thrown around by the waves are shown in these 2 beautiful textile pieces. Okay, so we need to think about how you use line, not colour at the moment, just line, to show that feeling of movement in the water. And how could you translate that into stitch? So what I've done is I've taken this example, this textile example, I've turned it into black and white, so we're not thinking about colour anymore. And then I've started looking at all the different types of lines in here. So you get some very thick and bold and dramatic lines, you get some very sort of subtle ones, some areas that crisscross, you get some broken lines here where it stops and starts, some circular areas here that are repeated, some continuous lines here, okay, that just go on and they show those clear shapes, those clear forms, and some repetition here where the lines repeat over one another. So what we've got to do is think, we could probably do a drawing of that and use broken lines, circular lines, continuous lines, and repeated lines, but how could we translate that into stitch? Okay, so this is what I would do to change line into stitching. So back stitch is a fairly simple stitch to learn, and I will add a video tutorial for you to have a look at to see how to do that. And it's great for continuous lines, and not only can you have it straight, it can curve and it can overlap. You can get circles with it, so you can get some really, really interesting stitches. Running stitch is great for giving you a broken line. So if you've got areas in your piece where you want the lines to be broken, or you want them to look a little bit jagged or a bit more textured, then running stitch would be great for that. And if you've got areas where you want to really just sort of fill in and block in large areas, satin stitch is excellent for that. Okay, so what I did, I was looking at the shape of a wave, and I've got a piece of old pillowcase. Now you could use, if you've got fabric, you could use polycotton or calico, but if you haven't, and I didn't have any fabric in lockdown at home, you could just get some old pillowcase, ask your parents first and ask if you can just have a section of that. The one thing about textiles is it takes a long time, so if you were going to produce a really detailed piece of work, you would want to keep it fairly small and no bigger than that anyway. So I don't know if you can see, but I've actually just sketched out very lightly in a pencil, but I don't want to do it too hard because I don't want to see the pencil lines once I put the colour on. Then I've started to add just some watercolour paint, but if you've got acrylic you could dilute that, or inks you could dilute that, and just put some of the basic colours. And I wanted this idea of the colours bleeding into one another to get that feeling of flow and blending. And then what I've started to do is use my continuous line with my back stitch starting to bring that through, and then some running stitch starting to bring that around. So that's one way you could start, but you don't have to do that. So we could have a look at another couple of artists and see how they. So this is local artist Naomi Renif, who instead of just focusing on one wave or just a small area, she likes to take a whole view, and using the beautiful coast that we have as her inspiration, she will actually start to paint areas of colour and then add fine lines of stitch over the top. So she gets these beautiful seascapes that go from the foreground all the way to the background and give you this wonderful long view. So that's another idea for a way that you could take a textile piece. This artist, Amanda Richardson, who is an international artist, I really like her work because it's very interesting. She uses a lot of stitch, but she also then uses knitted yarns and wools, and has bits that sort of hang out in a very constructed textiles way, and she blends them all together to get lots and lots of beautiful shades of blues and greens and yellows, and it's almost like the wave is actually forcing its way out of the frame. It actually hangs off the frame. This one here again is not Amanda Richardson's, it's another artist, but you can see the use of satin stitch, okay, for blocking in areas, as I said to you before, the running stitch, okay, and the back stitching, which again provides these beautiful bits. And if we think back towards those first ones where they use embellishments, she's got some beading which you could add here, and there's also some little knitted French knots, all different techniques that you could use. So what are you going to create? Anything that you like that's inspired by the sea, that could use elements of textiles in it. It could combine textiles and painting and drawing and collage and all different sorts of techniques, or it could just be a straightforward textile piece on its own. But think about the use of line, think about your colours, okay. If we even just look at this one here, look at all these beautiful shades of very pale and vibrant areas of blues and greens. So think about how you mix your colours, and if you're using embroidery thread and machine thread, put your colours in front of you, think about how you capture those shades and beautiful different types of colours, and then think about how you use line to create that movement and that power, and get your inspiration from the beautiful coast of Jersey. And I look forward to seeing your work in September. Good luck, Year 6.